GitHub has a number of security offerings, all of which are free to open source maintainers, so you can use them at no cost on your public repositories. Let's take a look at a few of these. If you've been working on code in a public GitHub repository, you may have already noticed a pull request come in from someone called Dependabot. That's GitHub's tool for checking that your dependencies are vulnerability-free and up to date. This is a section called Code Scanning. If you don't see this section, you're probably working in a private repository. But if you do have it, I recommend clicking the Setup button next to CodeQL Analysis. This will make it possible for GitHub to look for pattern-based vulnerabilities in our code. You might have noticed already, right under that button to turn on CodeQL, there's another setting called Copilot Autofix. GitHub will use the Copilot engine behind the scenes for you, automatically suggesting a fix for that problem. Then all you have to do is accept to fix the PR, and no need to run GitHub Copilot manually. Secret scanning makes it possible for GitHub to warn you about exposed secrets, like passwords or security tokens. You never want these to be directly embedded in your code, so secret scanning lets you know if it finds any and tells you where to remove them. And with push protection turned on, it'll help proactively block any new secrets from being committed into your GitHub codebase.
Quack. Welcome to Rubber Duck Thursdays. It's going to be a weekly stream where we write code, talk about stuff, and we got ducks. I also see this question, what is this about? This is about open source. Our open source community showing how we code things, how we use GitHub to build things at GitHub. I purposely want it to be more guided by what you all want to hear. Anyway, you wanna do some coding?
Have you tried GitHub's new MCP server? MCP is an open protocol that enables AI models to securely connect to tools and data in the GitHub ecosystem. This is GitHub's official open source MCP server. It's like giving your AI assistant superpowers, all from inside VS Code. Let's take a look at what you can do with GitHub's MCP server. You can automate GitHub workflows and processes like triggering actions and managing issues right from chat. You can extract and analyze GitHub repository data using tools like code scanning and repo metadata to generate insights instantly. You can even build your own AI-powered tools to interact with GitHub, creating custom extensions to connect with GitHub APIs and integrate right into your developer workflows. Setting it up is incredibly simple. Let me walk you through it. For VS Code, first, make sure you have the latest version of VS Code installed, then head to gh.io/MCP. That's going to take you to the GitHub MCP server repo page. This repo contains all the code and documentation for the server. Don't forget to leave a star. You can scroll down to the README and see this one-click option here, just to install for VS Code or VS Code Insiders. We'll select VS Code, and that's going to automatically open our editor. You can see I'm able to look at the configurations, and here's where I'm going to update the secret. Also, I need to make sure that I have agent mode enabled. Once that's done, you can interact directly in the GitHub Copilot chat box by selecting agent mode. This is going to allow Copilot to access and use the GitHub MCP server tools. Now you're ready to interact through natural language. You can ask things like run get me, which is going to show you a brief overview of the authenticated user. You can even give a task. I wanted to create a new repo called MCP-tips and even add the content that's gonna go into the README. So once I specify what I want in it, the MCP server goes and does the work for me. With GitHub's MCP server, you're enabling a new class of AI-powered tooling, whether for automated workflows or using insights from repos. It's all open source, developer first, and ready to extend. It works seamlessly with VS Code agent mode, plus you can use it with any tool that supports the Model Context Protocol. Try it out, start the repo, and let me know what you're building.
GitHub Universe, the World's Fair of Software Development, is officially in preparation mode for our event on October 28th and 29th. The call for speakers is now open through May 2nd. And so if you got insights on AI, developer experience, or security, now's your chance to shine. This event promises to be a mix of innovation, inspiration, and maybe a little bit too much coffee. Whether you're a speaker or an attendee, it's bound to be a developer dreamland, and I know I've really loved attending every single year, so we hope to see you there.
Hey everybody. That's a different. There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Open Source Friday, the show where we talk to maintainers about the apps that they're maintaining. I'm Kadesha, and I'm so happy that you're here with me today. Say hello to me in the chat so that I know that you're here. We've been doing so much awesome stuff at GitHub and especially in the open source space. And today I'm super, super happy to be talking to Jeremy from the OpenSPP project. And OpenSPP is kind of reimagining how social protection systems are built and deployed. At least that's my understanding of OpenSPP. Jeremy will be telling us a lot more about that later. So hello from the UK. Hello and happy Friday. Thanks y'all so much for joining. I'm gonna pop Jeremy on the screen now. Hi, Jeremy.
Hello, Kadesha.
Welcome to the stream. We're so excited to have you on.
I'm excited as well. Thank you very much for having me.
So let's just jump right into it, right? Because these streams have a way of just going when we're having too much fun. So kind of tell us, who is Jeremy and how did you get to OpenSPP?
Okay, wow, that's a very long story. I'll try to make it short. I've been doing open source for the past 20 years. I kind of started, I was in a group in France. I'm French, but I'm based in Asia now. But I was in a group called the Paris Open Source Get Together 20 years ago, something like this. And actually, when I was still at school, I started working in companies doing open source. So to a project called XWiki, which is an enterprise wiki platform as open source, and also then Exo platform, which is like enterprise portal. And this is how I got into open source and spending quite a lot of time with people like from Netscape, from all this modular space, from the days. Yeah, so that was very interesting. This is how I got into open source.
I know you said Netscape, and it's just like, whoa, you're kind of like you've been in the tech industry. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's quite old. And then I started doing my own thing. So worked on non-open source projects. And I think almost 10 years ago, we started a new company around doing development services for the humanitarian and development sector, focusing on working with the UN on beneficiary management, distribution. And this is where we saw a lot of needs in the market of things that are missing, things that are either very expensive also otherwise. And we started building things here and there. We were like recommending existing software when we found them. And when we could not, we basically started building something. So we built few open source software like this. And this is how we got also to OpenSPP, where we were working with a large UN organization that had the fund to build such system internally. But then we were having a lot of requests from humanitarian organization or small organizations that needed a way to manage beneficiaries and to do distributions. And so we had an opportunity and the fund, and so we started building this. And this is how we got into this.
Nice. That's quite the journey, but I love to hear it. So I know that OpenSPP is classified as a DPG or digital public good. Can you tell us a little bit more about the digital public goods movement and why open source is such a critical part of it?
Yeah. So DPGs can be different things. So it can be software, it can be AI models, it can be data set, it can be standards also, I think. And so what it is basically open source software that have some additional requirements, but things that most of the open source software have, but that have goals toward the sustainable development goals, right? So basically, deep open source that is for goods, and they are trying to move the needle around this. So, I mean, in the end, there is a lot of software, a lot of open source software that can go into this this space. Yeah.
Nice.
So
nice.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about OpenSPP. What does SPP and OpenSPP stand for, if it stands for anything? And kind of tell us a little bit about the project.
Yes. So OpenSPP, and so the SPP stands for Social Protection Platform, because it's really what we started with. But it's basically a platform based on an ERP called Odoo, open source ERP. That provide solution for beneficiary management. So knowing like who do you want to distribute things to, what information about the household do you need, how do you do the targeting, and I can show it later a little bit. And also doing all the transfer, right? So being able to say like, okay, I'm going to give, let's say $5 per household that have children under 5 years old, right? Or let's say after a catastrophe, like after a disaster, we could say like, okay, there is a flooding in this area, for example. I want to distribute food to the people in this area, and we can do geolocation query and say we're going to give cash transfer, or we can do in kind to these people. We started with this, and we do also now working on farmer registry.
Interesting.
It's probably going to be disability registry. So a lot of things in this space with the registry as a base, and then how do we help government, how do we help humanitarian organizations to go and distribute things. And our first large project was Iraq, for example, and to show a little bit like the type of country we're working with. Iraq was the first one, and we were now working in a project in Laos, in Sri Lanka also, and other country in Africa I can't tell much yet, but it's countries also in Africa. So mainly we work mainly in low and middle income countries.
I see. And so essentially you're allowing a way for let's say like an organization wants to distribute food to a local community. So OpenSPP allows that organization to distribute it better or faster or track it.
Yeah, no, so that's a very good question. So there is a lot of different things. So like you would want to do what we call targeting. So basically you want to, you would define some criteria to who do you want to distribute food, right? So for example, so you would say, I want to give to woman-headed household with children under 5, with at least the children under 5, for example, right? Or people who lost their job, for example, in the last 6 months, right? So either the data is captured and pushed into OpenSPP, or we can connect to other systems also to pull the information. And we build we work not as part of OpenSPP, but we did things, for example, at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, quick registration of people also to be able to do distribution of cash, for example.
I see.
And so you can do this, and then you can determine what people are getting. So for example, you can say, okay, I'm going to give 2 liters of oil plus 1 bag of rice per person in a household, for example. And so we build all these computation things, and we made this quite customizable around this, adaptable. So with a key focus for us is to try to keep things simple so that they can also be owned and adapted locally by the local ecosystem, right? Our goal is not to make something that is complex and that is like just like very few developers can do, right? We try to take technologies that are fairly simple, that are fairly popular in the area we are, to be able to be taken over by the local ecosystem to support it.
Okay, so let's take a look at OpenSPP while we're at it before we get into some more broader questions.
Okay, sounds good. So so again, it's quite boring, OpenSPP, because it's really like a registry, and so it's an ERP, right? So it's kind of a CRM in the end. So the registry part is that we have group. This is demo data, and I randomly generated, so that's why like there is a bit of duplicates in the names. But we have groups. We can visualize data also as maps, because we can have geo coordinates. So we can here, for example, we have like farms in Kenya, for example, right? And we can do filtering on this and search on this. But I can also go into details on specific farms. So actually, let me open it from elsewhere. It's going to be a little bit easier to see. So if I open it from here, we can collect information. So this is kind of a demo of a farmer registry. So it has a lot of information, and all of this is customizable, right? So this is one setup of OpenSPP. And because it's an ERP, it makes it like very easy to customize all this. So to every implementation, the fields can be quite different. We have basic concept, and then it's quite adaptable. So we can collect information about what people are growing, what are they raising, all of this, right? And then, so from all this information, so we have group, we have individual, we have like hierarchical information. But then the goal is not just to store this data, but like to be able to use it, right? So we then can have programs where the idea is you want to do distribution. So I'm going to create a program, and I'm going to say I want to distribute to, I forgot what I have in this database in terms of data, but why do I have because I guess I have a problem with the Zoom, I guess. I'll take this one, the first one. So for example, highest level of education, right? So I'm gonna select what level of education I want, at least at minimum, right? Or I can have normally I should be able to select more things. Forgot what I have, like marital status, right? If people are married or anything. Like, I mean, I have more things, and I guess it's because I zoom on the page that I don't see them, all of them. But yes, then I can configure like, okay, how often do I want to give things, right, to people? And I can say I'm going to give like every month, every 2 weeks, every first day of the month, every first Friday, whatever. And then I can define what I want to distribute. So in this one, like by default, we have we can define I'm going to give a certain amount per cycle, so basically per distribution, right? So I'm going to give $10 per distribution, right? So I can define this, and then it creates my distribution list, my cycles and everything. But some of the interesting things, more technical and more interesting things I think of this is the capacity, and we didn't invent this actually. Like it's really like the thing coming from the ERP, from Odoo. But so you saw before, I can only do cash, for example. The cool thing is that people can do, let's say I want to do in kind, and it's going to be probably written in one word. Okay. Okay, in-kind entitlement, right? So I can install the in-kind entitlement. And as soon as I go back to my program, when it's reloaded, okay, I can do my program. And now I can create entitlement with in-kind, right?
Okay.
So meaning that I can distribute products, right? And then I can do, I can say, I'm going to give, oh, here I have more details. I can give, I can select multiplier. So basically I can say, I can give 10 bag of rice per people, for example, right? So all of this. So I mean, like, this is basically what OpenSPP can do.
Awesome.
We have a lot of other things, but I think, yeah.
Of course. So, like, do you know what the tech stack is behind the software? Like, do you know what specific technologies or frameworks or design patterns that's being relied on to build OpenSPP?
Yeah, so basically it's Python, right? Odoo,
Python,
Odoo is
okay.
kind of Odoo is a framework basically based on Python. It's a Postgres database. We sometimes use Redis. We after it really depends for deployment. So by default for development we use Docker Compose, but in production it can be Kubernetes, bare servers, because also like oftentimes where we deploy, we need to, like, people are not that many people are trained at Kubernetes, for example, right? So we try to keep also the stack to manage fairly easy. So like people could just do Docker Compose and run it on a bare server.
Sure.
Or, yeah. So we try to keep the technology simple, at least at the center, at the core, easy to manage, quite simple, bit boring. Yeah.
Sure. And we have a question here about this one. We have a question here about security. So how is data protection handled with OpenSPP?
Yeah. So there is, how to answer this? There is like a data access for everything, and this is also one advantage of working with an ERP, right? It has like all these rules already, so we can do a very fine grain access to the data. Then after, it's a classical security of web apps and security vulnerability testing and everything, right? But at the core things is, and what is, I think, setting it apart from most of the other systems is the granularity in terms of access rights. So for example, there is a feature we implemented where, let's say, support people, they cannot see data about anyone, and they can only see the data about people when there is a ticket that is created from this person assigned to them, and then they get access to this person's data, right? So we try to be very careful with how access is being done. We can also encrypt data and some data, like PII, for example, encrypted. We are also working but this requires more ecosystem. But let's say if you have a system like MOSIP, which is another system for identity, national identity, we don't need to store the name of the person, right? If you're distributing cash, or if you're distributing in kind, you don't need to know the name of the person. You just need to know to have some information about them, right? So structure of the household maybe, or where they're living, but we don't have to do this. So whenever possible, we try also to reduce the amount of data that is in OpenSPP. So because data that is not there is more secure. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. And so for the developer audience who would like to use their skills for in the digital public goods space, what do you think are some tangible ways they can get involved in that?
Yeah. So I think GitHub has something like GitHub first issues for goods, I think, or
GitHub
something
for
like
good.
this. Yeah, GitHub for goods, right? So I think, that's probably a good way to get started, because it's DPGs that are looking for contributions, right? There is a lot of projects. Actually, the official registry for digital public goods are on Digital Public Good Alliance website. And looking at what you're interested in, right? There is a lot of different projects, and see where do you want to have an impact. And I think as developer, it's quite interesting. And what I like a lot for me, right? I've been developing for 20 years, and this is still what I love to do. And being able to work on technology and trying to have an impact, trying to do something better. And actually a lot of DPGs have paid teams also, right? So it's not just there is definitely a lot of work, and I spend a lot of my nights and weekends on this, and a lot of people are doing, but that there is also we have teams that are, part of our team is paid, and so there is also ways to get to work on these things, and being paid to work on open source and paid to do work on these things for good. So it's probably not the highest paying jobs, but
it's fulfilling.
Exactly. So I think, and a lot of our team is I think they're staying also because of this, right? They like the impact we're having.
Nice. And does OpenSPP offer a data set or anything like that?
No. So we don't own the data. As much as possible, we don't host it. We don't have access to the data. This is what we're trying to do, right? So either it's a humanitarian organization or the government that owns it, that runs it. For humanitarian, sometimes we need to help them a little bit more, so we might have access, but never, we don't offer the data set, no. Definitely.
Cool. And so earlier you were telling me about a project, an adjacent project related to OpenSPP that helps to translate applications into languages that are not common to LLMs. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, definitely. So that I'm gonna share the other window, but basically, yeah, we have a problem is that we're working in places where there is not large places. Like if you talk about Laos, for example, right? It's I think 8 million people. There is very little content in Lao online, so it's you don't have really good translator. Like if you look at Google Translate, at Bing Translate, or Yandex, which Yandex is actually the state of the art for Lao. Quality is still not really great. So we needed to find a way to translate OpenSPP, because like it's thousands and thousands of strings, which would be very long for having someone to do this. So we were looking at how can we do this. At least like my goal was to do like we can do 80% automatically, and 20% would be manual fixes, but that would already help a lot. So what we experimented with is finding glossaries that exist. So we found a glossary about agriculture, for example, of translation, that were validated by the government. We found also other open source software that were well translated. So in the case, for example, LibreOffice we're using, because they are very good translations. They have the same license as us. It's a good match for us. So basically, initially I was trying to do things a little bit smart, but actually LLM now have huge context. So what basically I'm doing is that I'm putting my glossary. I kind of filtered the glossaries first. So there is a lot of pre-processing on the glossary. So for LibreOffice, I got like the PO file. I got the Lao PO file, deduplicate them, created a TSV file with this. Then I did this for an agricultural glossary as well, specific, and we had also some people that were like as we were going back and forth, that validated the glossary, right? So this one, I'm using it as this is a valid set. So like if any string match this, then use this or prioritize it. So basically, we load the different glossaries. And then we format the glossary for the prompt, right? So here, and wait, let me show the prompt quickly. It's down here. So basically, I mean, we have a prompt where we say like, yeah, you are an expert, technical expert of translating. We tell it that it's for Odoo, right? I mean, and English to Lao is hard-coded because it's the one I'm working on, but the idea is to make it more generic and not just for Odoo, to post it as open source as well. And we give it like some information, which was like learn as we were going about it. And we ask it to give us the translated strings, but also to give us like, does it things that not sure about like how the translation is, and do we need to review, right? So like this, I can say, I can help also reduce the amount of work people that are reviewing it to do, right? I can show them the most likely things that are not so sure, and it even gives a reason of why, and it's working quite well actually.
Awesome.
So yes, and so basically, like if you look at one PO file, right? I mean, I think a lot of people here are familiar with PO file. If you've done translation and internationalization, so this is a file, right? And then what I can do is I can run it, and if demo gods works, it's gonna work. So basically, I'm running my code, and so it tries to look at, okay, do we have the strings already in our dictionaries that were validated, and what are the strings that we don't have validated, right? So it's going to run through it. So it found quite a lot of strings that were validated, because actually we already translated, but we updated the app since the last translation. So there is some that were not validated. So it's running. It's probably going to take 10, 15 seconds more. And here it is. So, and now it told me is that, okay, there is 29 strings, and 4 were updated, and there is 3 that need to be reviewed, right? And now you see the file, my PO file, has been updated with the translation, right? And I guess if I look for fuzzy, yeah, for example, here, fuzzy, right? So here I see that this translation is not sure, and it actually wrote in the comment the translation. This is likely a Boolean field, while its concise might be clearer, right? So even give like, it's not sure about those things. So like maybe there is translation. So then this information I can show it to the translator, and then they will be able to do the things. So meaning like this is like a big problem for DPGs, right? Because DPGs more or less is focused on building software for things where the market is not able to do it, because there is no not always, like often there is no market, there is not enough revenue to make it valuable, right, to work on this. And a lot of problems for all the different languages and local languages, right? And if you're talking about, I mean, I'm based in Thailand, but all Southeast Asia, there's a lot of different languages. Africa, the same thing, but there is not always like a lot of content online. And the idea is that this can help translate at scale to other languages and people who don't have access to. And I think it's going to be quite amazing for inclusivity of people who couldn't get access to this type of tools before, to be able to access it in their own language, right? So yeah.
Cool. And so these are the kind of like side projects that OpenSPP works on to offer to the community, or how does this go back? I'm trying to say, like, how does this go back to being related to the OpenSPP project?
Yes, so this is like, for example, like this is typically a problem we saw, like for an implementation in Laos, we have this problem, so we're trying to build like what is missing, right? But for example, we did also another open source tool that is under another brand called ID Pass Smart Scanner, which is a tool to read national ID document, passport. Basically, like we were working with organization that were being charged $1 per identity read, which is outrageous because it's just OCR. So it's OCRing a document and reading a chip. It's not, and there was a lot of open source libraries that were doing this. So like we basically build an open source solution to do this, leveraging open source algorithm and smart card reading, and released it, and it saved like hundreds of thousands of dollars to the organization we were working with at the time. But I know it has been used elsewhere, like we use it elsewhere to register like millions of people. So it's helping also to improve the data quality and everything, right? So so this, we're working also on a registration app, because we're working in places where there is not always internet, right? Like some of our work is like in remote area, in mountain, where there is no internet, or even if there is internet, there is maybe not internet all the time. So a lot of the specific problems we see that not all the developers can see is working offline, synchronization, but offline for a long time, synchronization. So we do also a fair amount of work around this as well. And a lot of our work also is around interoperability. So we do also quite a lot of work on interoperability standards and working with others to look at how can we make different system communicate. So for example, we're working with CRVS, so civil registry. How do we make like a civil registry? So for example, you want to add to your household a child. How do you communicate with to get the birth certificate and verify the birth certificate without having to do it manually, right? Or to do it faster. So yeah, lots of things like this. Yeah.
Cool. Well, one more question from me is so like, how do you balance the transparent nature of open source with the sensitive nature of social protection data?
Yeah, very good question. So as open source, we publish, so we have a separation between what is a core of OpenSPP, right? And so this is what you're going to find on GitHub on OpenSPP modules. And we also have on after like we work a lot with partners, right? So for example, for Laos and Sri Lanka, an organization called New Logic, and then they have their own repositories that are not open source, right? That are given to the government, but that are not open source. So all the specificities are there. But we try as much as possible to incentivize for everything that is reusable. to be moved to open source, right? So we try to incentivize everyone to contribute to open source, because like it make it easy to collaborate, it make it easy to reuse, it make it easy to maintain, reduce the burden on the country or the organization to maintain. So yes.
Nice. So with the OpenSPP database repository specifically, and for developers who would like to contribute to the repository, what parts of the code base would benefit the most from new contributors right now? Are there any open issues that folks can take a look at to help improve the code base?
Yes, so I think we have defined first good issues, a couple of them. So I mean, I guess that would be first thing. It could be also documentation is always one. Things for people also that are interested in AI, like there is quite a lot of things that I would love to experiment with AI around this. I think one thing is I would love, and I haven't had time to do, is testing the Copilot, where I think you can create your own package Copilot plugin, right, for specific for a system. And because I think very soon, for customization of OpenSPP, like in country, and especially because it's based on an ERP, so like all the models know very well about Odoo because it's an open source software that has been there for 15, almost 20 years, I think. So it knows it very well. It's very good at creating modules for it if you guide it. And so I think like customization of OpenSPP is going to become more and more easy. And like one thing, for example, I would love, and if anyone want to contribute to this, like testing how these Copilot plugins can help to do this. How do we make it, basically, like how do we improve the developer experience with AI for this? How do we help, like in countries, for people who are not especially familiar with this framework, to get easier to customize it? I think that would be kind of interesting and fun task to work on. After, there is like always task more like on maintenance and everything, which are a little bit less fun, but yeah.
Gotcha.
But they're much needed in open source. Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, OpenSPP definitely sounds like a really cool project, especially in the DPG space, and so happy with all the work that you're doing. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with people before we wrap up here?
No, look into digital public goods. I think there is a lot of interesting projects. Go to the Digital Public Good Alliance registry. Contribute. See if there is things that you like. And I mean, OpenSPP would be great, but there is a lot of other projects in like climate mapping, a lot of things, and start contributing or start building your projects, right? I think like the community is quite nice. There is, I think, more and more needs around this. There is more and more demands. I think I'm following now a little bit like what is happening in Europe, and there is a big movement also, I think, toward open source, toward sovereignty and independence that is helping, that is a very good candidate for open source, right? Because from what we're doing, a lot of people are thinking as open source like free, right? But at some point, someone has to pay for it. And I think the biggest value for me of open source is the sovereignty, like people not being dependent on a specific vendor and a specific organization, which is the best value. I mean, the best, for me, it's like really the most interesting things in open source. And yeah, so I think there is a lot of opportunities. Things are moving, things are changing, and so it's
And it's changing really, really fast too. Is the most interesting part. But thanks so much for coming on, Jeremy. It's been really wonderful learning about OpenSPP. And
Thank you.
everyone watching, if you want to go ahead and contribute to OpenSPP, you can go to gh.io// OpenSPP to check out the repository and all the open issues. There is a lot of opportunity here. I was just like scrolling through the issues. There's a lot of opportunities here for documentation, for installation guide, for translation. There are definitely a lot of issues here that you can dig into and start on your open source journey. This has been Open Source Friday. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.